Good evening. My name is Steve Worthington. I'm the mayor of University Place, and I'm calling the October 17th University Place City Council meeting to order. And with that, we're going to start with a roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Wood.
Councilmember Wood present.
Councilmember Fleming.
Councilmember Fleming here.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Present.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Present.
Mayor Worthington.
Mayor Worthington, present.
Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel present.
Councilmember Belisi is excused.
Thank you.
You
Appreciate
have a
that.
quorum, Mayor.
Excellent. Thank you. Councilmember Keel, would you be kind enough to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
My pleasure. Would you please stand with me?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I would now entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
This is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Is there a second?
Councilmember Keel, a second.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. Are there any objections to the approval of the agenda? Seeing none, the agenda is approved as distributed. It's now at this time of the week open our meeting up to public comments, which looks like we have a few this evening. So, and I have a list. And we'll work through the list, and then if there are others that wish to speak, we'll entertain comments from them as well after we work through the list. Additionally, we are taking comments online, and on your screens, if you're at home, you can see the procedure to comment by phone or through the internet. I'll ask for Emmy's help to identify anyone who's wishing to speak there. We'll deal with the in-person comments and then move to any internet comments and phone calls. And this evening, so that everyone will have an opportunity to comment, I'm inclined to, we usually provide 3 minutes, but I'm inclined to change that to 2 minutes just because I think we have a fair number of people here and I want to make sure everyone has that opportunity. Mr. Kaiser, is there anything that prohibits me from adjusting that time limit at this time?
There is no prohibition if council wishes to take a lesser amount of time, provided that all speakers have an equal opportunity to address the council.
Okay. Well, it seems if I make that a clear now at the front end of this, that we should be able to accommodate that.
I agree.
All right. Well, very good. With that, I have the first person on the list is Steve Zeal, it may be. I can't quite make out the last name. Does that sound close?
Zilk.
Okay. Thank you.
Is this right, sir?
Yes, if you'd like to have a seat, and if you could start with stating your name and address for us.
I'm sorry, do we or don't we get 3 minutes?
You have 2 minutes tonight.
I'm sorry, I wrote a speech for 3 minutes.
All right. And would you like a moment to adjust that?
I can't. I've spent hours making it for 3 minutes.
Well, when we have a crowd of this size, we are adjusting our time. There may be a later meeting, if you'd like, when we wouldn't have that number of people, and we could make 3 minutes available at that time, if you'd like.
Somebody else can give up their time?
That's not actually how we do it, but thank you. Appreciate the opportunity from that perspective to find a solution for everyone. So, we have, tonight we have 2 minutes available, Mr. Zeal.
Okay, what do you want me to do?
You may start whenever you're ready then.
And what's the procedure? I say my...
Your name and address, and then whatever you'd like to share with us.
Thank you. My name is Steve Zelt. I'm at 663 160th Street Avenue. Mr. Mayor and council members, the people sitting behind me are from an HOA called Harvest Ridge. And they are here tonight because they're tired of being treated unfairly by the city. They're tired of being forced by the city to guarantee the safety of a public utility, something the city does not make any other residents of the city do. 20 years ago, the land developer who built our HOA used a legal trick that made our HOA owners of a gigantic detention pond, and the city permitted it, which it should not have done. What the city should have done was to take ownership of that pond, like it took ownership of 43 other detention ponds throughout the city, and this pond should have been at the top of the list. Why? What's so important about this particular pond? Well, it's not a pond. You can put a 3-story building in it. This building right here will go inside that pond. That's how deep it is. Okay, now imagine that you're at the bottom of that pond and you're looking 3 stories up, and what do you see? Well, you see slopes coming down. 4 huge slopes. And inside one of those slopes is a 72-inch interceptor sewer pipe. It is not the HOA sewer pipe. It is a publicly owned pipe. It's a public utility. Now, when I say a 6-foot sewer pipe, people's eyes sort of glaze over, so I want to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about here. All over South Tacoma and Pierce County right now, thousands of people are flushing their toilets, and all that toilet water is traveling through hundreds of sewer pipes, and they're all going into one gigantic, massive 6-foot pipe. And that pipe is under that slope in the detention pond, which means that if that slope should ever come down, that sewer line is coming down. And guess what's on the other side of the detention pond? Leech Creek. And if that pipe goes down, that's the end of all those salmon running there, and that's the end of Leech Creek. And so we come to the big question that I wish to ask. Given the critical nature of that public pipe, who should be responsible for making sure that slope is always stable? Given the ecological consequences that would occur if that public utility collapses, who should be keeping watch? And everyone knows the answer. The city, obviously. The city of University Place exists to maintain the public safety by maintaining the safety of the public utilities in that city. And that's exactly what the city has done everywhere except in this one single instance. We're here tonight because we want the city to make a wrong decision right. Mr. Mayor, council members, we are formally petitioning the city to take legal ownership of that detention pond as it should have done 20 years ago. We're asking you to treat our homeowners like you treat all other homeowners in the city. We're petitioning you to put the safety of the ecology and public health into the hands of professionals who are employed by the city to do exactly that. Respectfully, we are asking the city to do what we pay taxes for it to do. We are asking you to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you. And our next person on the list is Candace Stubar. And if you could start with just stating your name and address, please.
My name is Candace Strubar. I live at 6639 60th Street West, University Place. Thank you for giving me these 2 minutes. I'd first like to say, Mr. Mayor, council members, we are formally petitioning the city to take legal ownership of that detention pond. As it should have been done 20 years ago, we're asking you to treat our homeowners like you treat all the other homeowners in the city. We're petitioning you to put the safety of the ecology and public health into the hands of professionals who are employed by the city to do just that. Respectfully, we're asking the city to do what we pay taxes for it to do. So speaking of taxes, all of the homeowners in Harvest Ridge, as well as everywhere else in the city, pay property taxes, and part of those property taxes are set aside to run sewer lines. All of the other homes in University Place pay taxes once, but University Place residents of the Harvest Ridge community, you're asking us to pay taxes twice. And to me, that is ethically not a good choice for the council members of our city to make. For all residents should be treated the same. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll take your comment. Next on the list is Diane Bradley.
Hi, my name is Diane Bradley. I live at 6609 60th Street West, University Place. A little bit of my background, when we first moved here, I worked for Safe Streets, and I'm sure you're all familiar with Safe Streets. I work with Priscilla Lisicic, who is like the most amazing woman who is retiring. But I learned there about the importance of community safety. And I really believe that this issue that we're bringing before you is a huge community safety issue. So we are formally petitioning the council of the city of University Place to take legal ownership of that detention pond as it should have done 20 years ago. I want to make sure that those who are coming after us are going to feel safe, that they live by there, and those who are in University Place that all are served by that retention pond, that they are remaining safe. We're asking you to treat our homeowners like you treat all the other homeowners in the city. We're petitioning you to put safety of the ecology and public health into the hands of professionals who are employed by the city to do exactly that. So respectfully, we're asking the city to do what we pay taxes for to do, and I agree. I don't really like the idea that we're paying taxes twice. I feel like we pay a lot of taxes already, but we have a great community, and I'm very thankful that you all serve and our community, and I'm very thankful that you're there to help keep our city on the right track. And so we really appreciate your support in this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next on the list is Bruce Robinson.
Hello, my name is Bruce Robeson. I live at 6101 62nd Avenue West, University Place. Mr. Mayor and council members, I'm a member of the Harvest Ridge Homeowners Association, and I'd like to speak in support of the petition and the comments presented to you by board member Steve Zelt. My wife and I have lived in our home in Harvest Ridge community for over 21 years and had no idea until recently that our homeowners association not only owned the property, but is responsible for maintenance of a large detention pond abutting the homes on the southerly side of the community. I believe to properly ensure the safety of public health and the ecology, both are protected, the detention pond and the 72-inch sanitary sewer collector is best served as a public facility under the ownership and maintenance of the City of University Place and its professional staff. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Next on the list is, it's Mac or Mark Basfor. I may not have done that last name justice, so I apologize if I...
It's been butchered worse than that. Mark Baseflug, 6503 60th Street West in University Place. I guess I would just like to reinforce what Steve said earlier. The HOA should never have been put in a position to be responsible for a gigantic retention pond with a 72-inch sewer line running through the top of it. As a HOA, we don't have the knowledge, the resources, or the money to pay for that. If we mess up being responsible and that slope starts to slide and that sewer is running down, as Steve said, into Leech Creek and then into Chambers Creek, then we have health issues, ecology issues. So the University Place needs to take responsibility for that section, that detention pond. And we're here to formally petition the city of University Place to take over ownership of that pond and ensure the safety of that sewer line above. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blackford. Next on the list is Martin Doyle.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Martin Doyle. I live at 6234 66th Avenue West in University Place. My wife and I moved to University Place in 2006 from Olympia, Washington, and I joined the HOA board 3 years ago, and shortly after I joined the HOA board, I was informed that we had this retention pond that we were essentially responsible for, and I had no idea up until that point that the pond that was there, that we had any responsibility to that or maintaining it. We got an unpleasant surprise after paying taxes in University Place for the last 16 years to know that we're going to have a special assessment due to the funds that the city is going to be charging our HOA to pay for the reconstruction of the part of the pond that they're currently working on, because we certainly don't have the funds in our HOA to cover that. So I am in agreement with other members that have spoken here tonight that Harvest Ridge is petitioning the city of University Place to take ownership of that detention pond on Bridgeport, which I feel it probably should have done 20 years ago, and treat us fairly and put the safety of Leech Creek and the public health into the hands of public paid professional management by the city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. Next on the list is Mark Bates.
Good evening. My name is Mark Bates, and I live at 6310 61st Street West in the Harvest Ridge neighborhood. And I'm just here to voice my support of this measure, that the city council will do the right thing and have the city of University Place take over this pond. And as a taxpayer and as a voter, I'm asking you to do the right thing and make this issue that was done, this decision that was made with the developer 20 years ago, correct the wrong now, so that we are not held liable and responsible for this pond. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. Next is Keith Brown.
Mr. Mayor and council members, my name is Keith Brown. I was one of the first homeowners that moved in the Harvest Ridge development there. And 20 years ago, we had no clue what was going on. I'm here to support my other members of our HOA and our development, that supporting them, that this should be something that the city take legal ownership of. And it should have been done 20 years ago. Like I stated, I'm here to support them, and respectfully, you will do something about this, the correct thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Next is, I believe it's Theodore Wallace.
How you doing, Mr. Mayor and other council member? My name is Theodore Wallace. I live at 6317 63rd Street in University Place. And I support everything that Steve said. And I would also like to thank you guys for your service that you do for the community. But we would like the city to take ownership over this detention pond. Not only does the detention pond serve our community, but it also serves the rest of the community in University Place. So we ask that you do the right thing and take over ownership of this detention pond. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Appreciate that. Well, thank you. Appreciate those comments. Right, we are through the comments that the people that have signed up on the list. If there's just a moment, I want to do a procedural thing, and then we'll carry on with other people in the room. So I wanted to get a show of hands so I could anticipate how best to manage this process. And are there other people that wish to speak tonight? And if so, just show me your hands. Great. Well, let me invite you up, sir. If it was 20, I was going to do something different. 1 or 2 or 3, no problem. But please join us. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. I was in the process of getting everybody signed up, and I forgot to sign up myself. I'm an older member of the community. I'm in retirement age, so the cost is kind of what struck me on this, and what the city is asking us through this contract that they want us to, in paying for the work that they did. They're asking us to make a reserve account, adding to that enough to repair this pond on an ongoing basis, which to me would be $20,000 a year. $15,000 would be what it will, or $15,000 is what it's going to cost us to maintain the pond on a yearly basis. So altogether, that's $35,000 that we have to come up with for this pond. On top of that, we still have to pay for the runoff water on our water bill from the city, which is costing us about altogether for each household, or for the whole subdivision, about $2,400 a month. So as you look at this, that $2,400 a month is what our neighbors are paying too. Mm-hmm. But what you're asking us to pay is 30 times more than what our neighbors just up the hill pay to take care of this pond. That's why we would like the city council to consider, and we're formally petitioning the city to take legal ownership of the detention pond as it should have done 20 years ago. We're asking you to treat our homeowners like you treat all the other homeowners in the city. We're petitioning you to put the safety of the environment and the safety of the public into professional hands which would be the city professional men. And I want to tell you, you have some really good men working on that pond for us down there. And we want to thank you for that. And they kept the cost in line. They did everything that we asked them for. But on top of that, we have to sign a contract. And that contract is causing us to have to pay 30 times what our neighbors are. So with that in mind, I'd like you to consider thinking about taking over the pond from us. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for your comments. Thank you. So is there anyone else that would like to comment on this issue tonight? Do we have anyone that would like to comment on a different issue? I'm not seeing any others. So before we move past public comments, I want to mention something to you. I really appreciate everyone's attention to this evening, and I appreciate how organized and how thoughtful and how condensed your comments were. That's how to be effective, I believe. But thank you for doing that. With that, I'm going to end our public comments, and we'll move on with the regular portion of our meeting. And that brings us to the consent agenda. So, and I would entertain a motion to approve. Oh, yes, thank you. So I would entertain a motion for the consent agenda approval.
This is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second for the consent agenda?
Councilmember Keel, I second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any objections to the consent agenda's approval? Any objections? I don't see any. The consent agenda is approved as distributed. And that brings us to our public hearing portion of this evening. So, excuse me, do we have any? I moved away from public comment before asking if we had anyone online. And it just occurred to me, and that they might still be there. So,
Mayor, there's no one online.
oh, that's a good answer, but I'm glad we looked. So, okay. That brings us then to the city manager's report. Mr. Sugg.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council and public. I just have an update for you on 3 projects that council awarded bid on last month. Those are Grandview Drive, Chambers Creek Road, and Lakewood Drive. So let me just start with the Lakewood Drive project. By the way, all 3 projects combined total over $4 million, and these are all 3 federal funded projects that the council awarded last month. I'm pleased to report that Lakewood Drive has been paved. It was an overlay project between Hannah Pierce Road and 64th. The striping has not yet been applied. It's supposed to be done next week, but I think we're going to get some weather, so that may be a weather-dependent issue, and stay tuned on that. But it is paved, so if you drive out there, you should see some nice, smooth pavement to drive on. And utilities are being raised to grade, so you'll still see some work being done. On Grandview Drive, that's also an overlay project, but first, as part of that project, contractors replacing the sidewalk ramps to meet ADA standards, the latest ADA standards, so you'll see those ramps being removed, and there's quite a bit of progress that's been made on that. Now again, when we get further on this fall, it's going to be very difficult to do the kind of additional work. The paving work is going to have to wait until spring, so there'll probably be a winter shutdown on that project. But the concrete work hopefully will be done on the sidewalk ramps this fall. And then finally, the Chambers Creek Road Improvement Project, which council approved and all the way through the planning process from Bridgeport to Charles Wright Academy, including a signalized crosswalk. That project is set to begin at the end of this month or 1st of November, so look forward to seeing the construction crew mobilize on site, and we anticipate there will be no winter shutdown, though they'll be able to work through the entire winter because it's not an overlay project. It's curb gutter, sidewalk, and signalized crosswalk. So we'll keep you posted on those 3, but I just wanted to update you on the 3 major projects that you approved, awarded bid last month. So thank you.
Very good, Mr. Sugg. Thank you. I appreciate those updates. And that's it? Nothing else right now? Nope. All right. I'm not asking for more, just wanted to double check. With that, we'll start council comments as well, and we'll start with Councilmember Keel. Do you have comments this evening?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and everyone. I do not have any comments tonight.
You do not, you said?
Do not.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Well, no problem. That brings us to Councilmember Wood.
I do have a comment.
Thank you. Let me get your mic on.
Thank you, Mayor. My comment tonight is first, well, they've all left, but to thank the people from Harvest Ridge for coming here and speaking with us tonight. And it's good to see the show of support and the fact that they were, obviously have a concern, but they're very respectful and eloquent in describing their concern. But I do want to ask city staff on this one, because we've talked about this in the past over the last couple of weeks. Are we making progress? Because one of the questions I had was, how many retention ponds we have in the city, how many are city run and held, and how many of them are privately held, and where and how they're located. I just need more information on that. If we can get a map put together that shows that kind of information, that would be helpful, I think. And then if there's any other examples of privately held infrastructure that could be influenced by a decision on this, say privately held, roads, something like that, because I just need to get a clear understanding of what the situation in the city is and how unique or not unique this particular detention pond is. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Wood. Then Councilmember McCluskey, welcome. Do you have any comments this evening?
I don't have any report outs, but I would like to concur with Councilmember Wood, and I would like to have a clearer understanding of retention ponds, who's supposed to maintain them, who's maintaining them, especially where there is a public, infrastructure running through it. What's Pierce County's responsibility? I have a lot of questions, and I'm sure our other fellow council members do. And so maybe a study session on this would also bring some closure and some good data and information so that we can make the right decisions going forward. If we have to make a decision or not, I'm not sure. So I'll close my public comment on that. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And then Councilmember Fleming. Any comments this evening? Oh, let's see if you push your request mic. I'll turn it on, or at least try to. There we go.
All righty. It's working. I do want to just echo the comments of the fellow council members with regards to Harvest Ridge, and just thank them for a great show and a great turnout. And I'm talking about a show of support. I'd like to take the request, Steve, that we got about getting information on the additional retention ponds, and maybe requests from the staff, just a quick brief on the Harvest Ridge retention pond to get a good background on how this whole thing came about. I appreciated the comments that everyone was making and some specific comments, but for us to make any kind of an informed decision, I think it's important for us to understand the background of how that came about and where it's been and where we are today on that project. The other thing I wanted to comment on is I did have the opportunity on Friday night to go to the city's Oktoberfest, and for those who missed it, what a great loss, because that was perhaps one of the best events I've ever seen the city put on. It was outstanding, to say the least, and kudos really to the city staff that made that one happen. Also to the vendors and to the community that participated. I think we had more people at Oktoberfest than we've had at the tree lighting. I don't know whether it was the beer or the music. Maybe we ought to bring all that back at Christmas for the tree lighting, but it was amazing. And so a huge thank you to the staff for that. It was a great, great program. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have a comment this evening?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Just real quick on the detention pond and all the requests for information. I think it's best and more appropriate if we have a study session. So, and I know the drill, and that is I'll be moving forward for legislative requests to study this, and if somebody wants to second, I'll help structure what this council wants from the city manager and staff to bring forth for us to study. And if you guys are, if I have a second, we can do that. So I think that's the best way to do this, is to do it through a study session. So with that, do I have a second anywhere? Okay, so I'll find somebody and so with that, we'll be working, I'll work with that other council member to put together a legislative request in the study session. Okay, with that, if you haven't had a chance to review your emails since 3 o'clock, you will be noticing quite a few emails from me. And the purpose of that was with our agendas fairly busy, and we never know when we have last minute interest like tonight. I noticed that we were and during the agenda time, I did express this to the mayor to give more time during the council reports, but then got to realize that it could, even when you give more time, sometimes it can get to 20, 25, 30 minutes, and it really is a long time. And what I decided as a council member in my reports to this council is to provide it to you via email because most of the committees that I'm assigned to have summaries and or meeting minutes in detail that I will be forwarding to you with any additional comments from me that you can review and pick and choose what you want to really dive into. And that being said, the remaining comments that I may bring forth is those that are not in the committee that I may be representing the city and or picking up here and there. And so with that, please, hopefully you'll pay attention to some of these reports because they are fairly important information. What I will do is highlight maybe 2 or 3 things from those reports that you may to bring your attention to just quickly so that you may want to have an interest and take time to do it sooner than later. So with that, I'll start tonight with, I sent you a report on the Puget Sound Regional Council Economic Development Board. In there, there's 2 things that you should pay attention to, and that is the next year around May, the Puget Sound Regional Council will be hosting what they call, along with coordination with a couple of federal agencies, will be hosting an America's Competitive Exchange. There will be various countries, about 50 award-winning applicants through the federal process that will be selected out of maybe 300 or 400 countries that, or applicants, not countries, but applicants, businesses and so forth from those countries that will be coming here to look at our region and how we do things and how they can partner up. So that's something you might want to look at. It's going to be a very, very big event that will impact all of us because we intend to provide some tours in the 4 counties that the council is made of. The other one, another note that you may want to read up on more is the legislative agenda. I know sometimes we quickly go through those, even in our council, and we have legislative agendas in the AWC and every organization out there. This particular one, the reason I have you note it, is that we combine ours, the Economic Development Board, with the Puget Sound Regional Council Executive Board. One of the things that I'm speaking very loud on would be local control. There's still conversations out there among certain members to have more control at the state level. So I'm pushing and verbalizing heavily on local control. Move on to, I've mentioned some things about, not some things, but I mentioned in the past council member meetings, about a work group, a PCRC work group looking at the TCC criteria by which grants are funded. As I sent information on that, I would appreciate you to take a cursory look, mainly because this process will change how we may continue to win awards, grants through the competitive process, or be less, and which could be a significant amount of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars to maybe even millions. So I think that's something that, as that goes through, any comments from any one of you, feedback, input would be appreciated. Just real quick, it is in the email, but I was appointed as the chair of that committee, of that workshop. So with that, Mayor, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. Appreciate that. And that brings me to the mayor's comments, and I have a few this evening. I'll try and make them succinct. One of those has to do with roughly 10 months ago, might have been more like 12 months ago, this council had talked about the potential of naming our newest bridge going over Chambers Creek as a Gold Star Bridge and giving that a special distinction, recognizing the sacrifices the Gold Star families have made. We have been exploring that, and the final outcome at this point is that's a very involved, very lengthy, detailed process. It may also be a fairly expensive process as well. As an outcome of that research, the Mayor Pro Tem and I are suggesting we don't do that, and we find another way to do this and to provide an appropriate honor, but to be a Gold Star namesake on that bridge is surprisingly complicated. So we can talk more about that. I wanted to mention it to you now so that you can think about it, and as the opportunities come up, we can discuss that further. But that's where we're thinking of, the Mayor Pro Tem and I are both of a mind there, and this is with a considerable amount of work from the city staff as well up to this point. Also, earlier this month, I had the opportunity to work as the alternate for our SHAPE group, or housing group. Councilmember McCluskey, who's made lots of those meetings, asked if I could fill in, and I did my best. And in that group, they did a number of things. I won't go into all those details. They did adopt their legislative agenda, and we will, that works fairly closely with some of the things we've been discussing as well. But I just wanted to let you know about that. It was a well-done meeting, and I appreciated the opportunity to participate in that and did. Also, last week, Councilmember Wood, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, his spouse Mary Kay, and my wife Jill Worthington, we hosted a dinner at my home for the 16th CAB leadership team. And Colonel Smith, along with his spouse Megan, and Chief Warrant Officer Sled and his spouse Marie, joined us for dinner. We had a very nice time. It's all part of our Community Connection program, and while the rules are we just can't all get together and do this, so we found a way to identify the three of us as representing the council and as part of your leadership team to host that. They were charming people. I enjoyed the evening very much and really appreciated them coming to University Place for dinner with us. So I wanted to share that, that bit of news with you too. Speaking of news, take a look at your calendars, because on January 28th, we're scheduling, yes, a retreat. That would be the usual time and probably the usual place. But just save the date and know that that's coming. We'll talk more about the agenda. And in fact, we'll probably talk a little bit about that potential agenda later on tonight. But I'll save that for the right moment when you can put that in context. And, but save the date, January 28th. You'll get some more notices, but that's what's going on. And I too had a chance to experience Oktoberfest. Didn't have the lederhosen nor the legs for it, but nonetheless, I had a good time. And it was, most of that was enjoying watching our community have a great time with that event too. So, any case, thank you for putting that on in terms of the staff work to make that as successful as it has been, and just a fun event. With that, I think that concludes my comments, and we can now move to our public hearing. And so this evening we have our 2023-2024 proposed biennial budget. We will start with a staff report and then move to a public hearing and public comment. Excuse me, Mr. Kazu, shall I open the hearing now or after the staff report?
I would encourage doing it after the staff report.
Thank you.
With the preliminary staff comments.
Very good. Leslie Bladesdale is here to help us go through the presentation, and please, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Leslie Bladesdale, Finance Director. Tonight is the first of 3 public hearings scheduled to give citizens an opportunity to provide comment on the 2023-2024 biennial budget. Later this evening, we'll hold our second study session. We held our first one 2 weeks ago and focused on revenues. Later tonight, we'll focus on expenditures. The 2023-2024 proposed biennial budget is balanced and fits the following conservative financial assumptions for city budgets. Operations budget is at core service levels. Staffing remains at 2022 levels. CIP is at core service levels using local dollars to leverage grants, and debt payments are budgeted according to the city's debt schedule. We have posted the full budget document on the website for any citizens to go out and review. It is organized into 7 sections: the budget message, budget guide, executive summary, operating budget, capital budget, and an appendix. We have tonight's study session and another study session on November 7th. We'll have a second public hearing on November 7th and a final public hearing on November 21st. Taxes in this budget, we've reviewed taxes. They are expected to decrease from the 2022 year-end estimates. In preparing the budget, we continue to be conservative with our revenue projections for the biennium. The proposed budget does include the statutorily allowed increase to the city's ad valorem property tax in each year of the biennial budget. Sales tax is projected to decrease from 2022 estimates as we wait to see what impacts the current downturn in the economy brings. Real estate excise tax collections are estimated to decrease as well. Through 2022, the real estate market continued to flourish, but with interest rates rising, the market has begun to cool, and we have projected our revenues commensurate with that. Fuel tax is estimated to increase, and those estimates come from a revenue estimator that we get through the MRSC website. Utility taxes for 2022 and 2023 are projected to decrease slightly. We continue to see declining revenues in our cellular and telephone tax, and our projections reflect that. Fees and charges are estimated to decrease slightly in 2023. Yes. I'm just following through the memo. This is the 23-24 budget public hearing memo. I'm on fees and charges, which is at the bottom of page 3. I can. Mm-hmm. That's page 4. It should say at the bottom, because I have 3 things on the agenda tonight, I put a description in the page numbers. It should say 2023-24 budget public hearing at the bottom right corner of the document. No problem. So, fees and charges are estimated to decrease slightly in 2023, and we show a slight increase in 2024. That one is mostly impacted by development services fees, which were provided by the Development Services Department, showing some higher revenues in 2023. When we move on to page 4 for our expenditure projections, it is a status quo budget with moderate inflation assumed for expenditures. A 6.5% COLA for all staff is included in 2023 and 2024, and we estimated increases to benefits at 5% or 10%. Those final numbers, I believe, just came in at the end of next week, and they are slightly lower than our projections, so our budget numbers should be good. We'll move on to new items that were included. Staff submits any new item requests, and the city manager reviews those in August prior to preparing the proposed budget document. The document includes $290,000 in new item requests made by departments. It includes some content creator for communications, an increase in the special overtime for police, and some projects, the Drexler rock wall repaint, some parking lot and entry repair upgrades at Public Works, a mini excavator, which is a new piece of equipment. It is not a replacement piece of equipment. A snowplow attachment for one of the pickups, also a new addition, a poly storage tank, and then water bottle fillers for City Hall. So in summary, the 23-24 budget is balanced and conservative. It assumes a continuation of the 2022 levels of service to the community. As always, we will continue providing the best service we can, meeting all of our contractual, legal, and debt obligations while exercising prudent cash management and maintaining our strategic reserve. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate that. Let's see. Before I'm inclined to move directly into the public comment, we'll have an opportunity for some clarifying questions from council a little later on. So with that, I'm going to open the public hearing on the 2023-2024 biennial budget. Do we have any members of the public that would like to come forward? Additionally to being in the room, we also have instructions about how to make comment online or via phone, and you can see that on your computer screen with the appropriate contact numbers there. So are there any members of the public that would like to give testimony on the budget in the room this evening? Anyone? One, two, one more time. Anyone? All right. I don't see anyone making comment tonight in the room. Emmy, do we have anyone online? My computer is off at this stage.
I don't see anyone online, Mayor.
Okay, well, fine. So we will pause our public comment. Note I'm pausing it because we're not closing the public hearing. The public hearing is intended to continue until November 21st. And then we will then move on to our study session. So, and with that, we can go into the study session and let's hear some more budget things.
Okay. Good evening again. Leslie Blaisdell, Finance Director. We are working on the second memo for budget in the packet. I identified its page numbers at the bottom right as budget study session number 2 to try and keep the memos straight. In the full packet, it was after the full copy of the budget document. Everybody there? Great. So again, it is a balanced and conservative budget, and tonight we'll focus on the expenditure projections. I'm going to move to towards the bottom of that page, and again reiterate that it is a core service level budget. Staff remains at 2022 levels. We have not added any new positions to the biennium. The CIP is at core levels, using our local dollars to leverage grants, and debt payments are budgeted according to our city's debt schedule. Our forecast has been updated with all of the proposed amounts included. So if you turn to page 2, At the top of that page is the updated forecast that shows you the projected ending fund balances of the various funds. There's only one fund that, through our forecast, goes into the negative, and that is the street fund, and that is projected in the year 2031. So there's some time to figure that out and see where things go with the various taxes impacting that fund. That forecast also is based on the 2023 budget and a budget amendment that will be brought to council in November that transfers approximately $1.2 million from REIT to the street fund. The legislature provided temporary financial flexibility by E2 SHB 1069, which included a provision that provides cities with flexibility through 2023 to use a portion of the city's REIT revenue for maintenance and operations of parks and capital facilities. As you all know, typically REIT can only be used for capital construction purposes. So the use of the REIT funds in 2022 and 23 shifts the projected negative balance in the street fund from 2028 to 2031. So as you can see, the current forecast shows it in 2031. Without this REIT transfer, the street fund would go negative in 2028. Before I move on, I wanted to see if there were any questions related to that.
Questions, anyone? We're looking good. All right.
Okay. So moving on to page 3, the expenditure budget is status quo with a modest level of inflation assumed for supplies and services. A 6.5% COLA for staff is included in 2023 and 2024, and we estimated benefits to increase between 5 and 10%. I've included a chart in the middle of that page, and that is the expenditures by department. And if you look at the 2023 proposed total of $23.6 million, you'll see that is up from our 2022 revised budget of 22.2, but the largest piece of that is the contingency amount. The contingency has 2%, our standard 2% contingency that we always budget, but that also includes the $1.1 million in one-time monies. It's in the contingency, so it would be appropriated until such a time when council decides how to allocate those monies for projects or towards council goals. I want to see if anyone had any questions about those department numbers.
I'm not seeing any of this. Oh, yes, I do see one. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Leslie, on the city council line item, I see the proposed, and I understand through our various one-on-one meetings that you're incorporating costs that normally we don't add in the budget to allow to ensure that council members are given the opportunity to go to a conference or other training that would be appropriate and necessary. The question I had to staff, you weren't there, was it seemed to be short of the real cost. If you look at 7 times, the cost of a conference, you would never be able to reach that number. So I'd like to have that revisited. Okay. The other one would be the debt service from 220 and 221, 7.2 million to 3.8 million, almost half. What was the biggest drop on that? Just give me a clue on what happened there that dropped it.
That's a very good question, Councilmember Figueroa. That in 2019, we refinanced some debt, and it was done in early December, and we received debt or bond proceeds for that refinanced debt for new LRF money. At the time, we could not do a budget adjustment to be able to put those monies into the Public Works CIP. So that fund had the ending fund balance of those additional bond monies. Then in 2020, at carry forward time, we we budgeted the transfer, and those monies were transferred to the Public Works CIP. Our debt service schedule is structured so that we pay about the same amount every year. And so as one debt gets paid off, we begin paying more on another one. So that is an anomaly there, that $5 million. It was approximately, I don't have the exact number, but a little over, right around $2 million that was bond money proceeds that sat in there, and then in 2020 were transferred to Public Works CIP for projects.
Okay, so our normal payments will be in the 3.5 million, correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Certainly. Other questions? We're good. Thank you, Leslie. Please continue.
Okay. We'll move on. There were, as I mentioned in the public hearing, some new item requests that were included in the budget. Those totaled $290,840, and those are included in the city manager's budget. We move to page number 4. We have community grants.
Thank you. Let's see, I think we have some questions on where we are with these new items. Is this the opportunity to explore those?
Yes, certainly.
Great. So I have one of the questions, which is with regards to the $70,000 for the mini excavator. Have we been renting one to date? And does that apparently prove out that we use it enough, it's time to own it?
That's my understanding. When we do those, we have been renting it. I got some details from Tony. It is to be used for surface water management projects, so that piece of equipment is fully funded with swim fees in this budget. It's for pond sediment clean out, storm pipe, catch basin, and ditch line repairs and installation.
Okay. And the poly storage tank, we have one already. I don't think we've worn it out, so we're getting a second one.
I believe that is an added storage tank. I was looking to see if Jack was over there.
Yeah, he was over a moment ago.
I believe it's an additional storage tank. We aren't replacing the one we already have.
I know we've had, that tank has come in handy, the one we have has come in handy with some supply issues. So I'm sure it's warranted, but I just wanted to hear just a little bit more. But all right. Enough of my thinking in peace. Who else had a question? Councilmember, there's Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. Leslie, we need to go back to community events and the operating expenditures by department. I know that the 20 and 21 were low because of the basically no events really happened. I'm actually questioning how we spent $70,000 on community events when we actually didn't do anything. Number one. Number two is, do you have 2019 was the last normal year? I want to compare what was spent that year compared to where we're heading now of $190,000. So, double question there.
Okay. I don't have the 2019 numbers with me. I printed everything from 2020 on, but I can certainly get that and provide it to council so you have a better comparison.
Okay, and how did we come up with $70,000 in 2020 when nothing happened?
In 2020, when I look at that, a part of that number is the community assistance, the community grants, so that's $6,000. It looks like there were, in 2020, before things totally shut down, there were some costs related to Jazz in the Village and Music on the Square. There were money spent for the 25-year celebration that was being planned at the time. And let's see. And then Winterfest, there were professional services for that, I would guess, from the video and that sort of thing.
I get it now. Thank you. Appreciate it. So yeah, if you can come back to the 2019, so we can. That's the last normal year compared to where we're heading. Thank you.
I can do that.
Oh, Leslie, I had another question for you too. The increased special overtime on police, that was an additional, or is suggested to be an additional $12,000.
Yes.
What's it currently at?
Currently, we budget $120,000. That special overtime amount was put in the budget back in 2015 at $100,000. It was increased to $120,000 in 2015, and it is used every year. Occasionally, we've had a little bit left over that we've carried forward for use in the following year. And Chief requested the additional $12,000 due to the contract increases and cost of salaries increasing. That reduces the number of overtime hours he can fund with those dollars, and felt it was time for a bit of an increase to be able to keep that level
And that's
where
about
he
a
needs it to be.
10% increase over what had been previously budgeted is what it sounds like. So, okay, thank you. Okay, we're good? We're on. All right. Please, I'll finally let you go.
All right. There aren't any other questions on the new item requests, so I will move on to
Mayor,
community grants.
Excuse me, if I can just jump in. I'm going to have City Engineer and Public Works Director Jack Eklund talk to you about the tank that we talked about.
Yeah, so the de-icer tank that's shown in there, so it's both a replacement. So our current one, with anything with de-icing stuff is subject to corrosion, so it's getting ready to, it's kind of at the end of its life, but it's both a replacement, but also a little bit of an upgrade as well. So it's a little bit more capacity than we have now, but that's what that one is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to community grants. The proposed budget includes a budgeted amount of $10,000 for community grants. It's included in the community events, it's called community grants and events budget line item. Pursuant to our budget policies, to continue this appropriation, we need reauthorization from council. So we like to bring it up as a separate item during our study sessions and meetings. The policy states that organizations that are not part of the city, but who receive funding from the city, should not have their appropriation carried forward from year to year, and it should be reviewed for reauthorization. So historically, both TACID and the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center are budgeted to receive $3,000. An additional $4,000 is appropriated for new requests that may be brought to the City Council. This was added several years ago by Council after someone requested, what if someone else needs money? So we have $4,000 in there just in case. To date, no such requests have come in, so it usually goes unspent. And then in order to get their $3,000, TACID and Crystal Judson both provide us with a report of services they provided to University Place residents at the end of the year. And once we get that report, then we can cut them the check. In the packet, at the end of my my memo, I did include their 2021 reports in case council wanted to take a look at those. So let's see if there were any questions on the community grants.
Community grants, by the way, is this general fund or is this a special purpose? In some
General
cases?
fund.
General fund? Okay. All right, I don't see any further questions. Thank you.
Okay, so the last piece for the budget study session is new item requests that are not included in the budget numbers. These are related to the 2023-2024 council goals, and I'm on page 5 of the memo. Earlier this year, we reported that we had $1.1 million in one-time monies at year-end 2021, and this amount is included in the budget in the contingency line item, awaiting council's decision on how to appropriate it. After developing and approving the 23-24 council goals, the council asked staff to identify budgetary impacts of strategies to achieve council goals. Staff has identified a number of strategies that could be funded with available one-time revenues, and then strategies with unfunded ongoing costs would require new revenues. So the first chart there are the new item requests for one-time items. So we have $707,500. That number has changed slightly since the last time I reported to you. Mayor Worthington brought up a very good question on some of the infrastructure items for parks. Some of the descriptions looked a bit like capital and some maintenance. So I went to Jack Eklund and his staff, and they went through those and were able to determine which pieces of those projects are maintenance and could not be partially funded by parks impact fees, and which ones were capital. So that adjusted that number slightly, and I've separated them into two sections. There are 4 projects that are maintenance, so those would all need full funding, and the capital projects can be funded 50% with parks impact fees, and that totals $707,000. And when we move to page 6, these are the remaining items that have ongoing costs, staff salaries, things that continue from year to year that we typically don't fund with one-time monies. So this concludes my report, and I'm happy to take any additional questions from council.
So, council, let me just add to Leslie's presentation on the new item requests that are not included in my budget to you. We have a plug number in. We have that amount that Leslie referred to, the $1.1 million. It's located in the contingency line item that she previously identified under the expenditure budget a couple pages back. That $1.1 million, you could choose to allocate it or not allocate it. And right now, it's if you agree with how I propose that, it would be appropriated as a contingency line item, and then you would determine in 2023 through a series of study sessions, possibly beginning with a council retreat, which you could devote towards some portion thereof towards determining your priorities on council goals, and then we could get into how those are funded. So you could do that, and you could defer that discussion until 2023, or you could choose to allocate it tonight. We have set it up so that that you could and that you probably would study it in 2023, but of course you could do something else, and you could decide to allocate all or a portion of it tonight for particular items. So I just wanted to throw those options out there for you before you begin your discussion and any questions that you might have of staff.
And while we're talking about, if I may follow with that, so I mentioned earlier that something might come up that could be an agenda issue for us in the retreat. Prioritizing these goals could be one of those agenda items where we can focus for a period of time and identify where our priorities as a council fits in. We'd have the money set aside. We know we could do something, and we can make our choices. So potentially that may be a subject for the retreat. But I wanted to tie that in, and it seemed now's the best time. Councilmember Keel, you, I believe, have a comment.
I do. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Leslie and Steve, for the report. The question I had is about these one-time dollars. We have now in the budget 1.2 million, something number like that. But the number that I see now, after staff did some adjustments, it's 707,000. So now, if we took everything on this list, we would theoretically have enough money already set aside to cover all of these things, right? And we'd have some money left over.
You could cover the one-time items, all the one-time items on that list, and you have about $400,000 left over.
Okay, yeah. Great. And so, right, yeah. And so now going to page 6, where there's the ongoing things. Now, is that 1.6 million? Is that 1.6 million ongoing every year?
Yes.
Additional?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a lead balloon. All right. So Mayor, when we talk about that, are we going to look at these things too as well, the ongoing?
In my view, yes. We would look at those ongoing. We'll look at the one-time and the ongoing and see where the priorities sit. And obviously, if we were having ongoing expense, we're all on this council well acquainted with the difference between one-time money and ongoing expenses. So clearly, there's a different approach, and we would need to figure out what that would be.
Yeah, just my input to where my head is now is the one-time items, unless we found something that was on that list that whoa, how'd they get on? We really don't want to do it, and we just take it off. Given what the numbers are, it's just like, okay, we got enough for the one time. We've all looked at it. We kind of went through that whenever we went through it a year or two ago. I think my idea is let's just do it, and we have that, and then have a deeper, richer, more robust discussion about the ongoing thing. I think that's kind of where the devil
That
is.
could be, in my particular view, I think we can spend a little time picking through the one-time items, because it's been a year, and maybe our priorities have shifted. So but I don't think that's a big discussion. I think it's a relatively quick discussion.
Yes, and so I thought I heard you say we would prioritize them, right?
Yeah.
Well, if the number we have is larger than the number we're going to spend, well, we can get through all of them, right? Unless you're saying we pick through whether or not we want to do, we had 15. Do we really want to do the 15? Even though we have enough money to do 15. If that's the question, yeah, that's a different question.
Yeah, that's sort of one of the questions. Yeah. Okay. But the more challenging discussion is what do we do with an ongoing expense? So, I think Councilmember Wood, I've noticed before, I've noticed Mayor Pro Tem. So, and are you on the list?
I'm good right now, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. The only comment I wanted to say is I'm not prepared to do anything tonight. I would like a discussion of priorities, both one-time and because some of that one-time money could be used to fund the start of an ongoing cost. And I want to make sure we're prioritizing correctly. So I'd like to discuss that starting at the council retreat. Yeah.
Good to know. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm in line with Councilmember Keel. This council did some heavy soul searching on how to spend one-time money, because this city got into trouble spending one-time money for ongoing costs in a very serious way. And we said in this council, right prior to you coming on board, Councilmember Fleming, but I'm sure you're aware of it, but I know that, and I know you and Keel and Councilmember Denise and Belisa were all here, and we said one-time money is for one-time costs, period. I don't know, we should have put it on a resolution, as we should have done. Maybe we didn't, maybe we did. But certainly I remember that very distinctly, and I think we all do. And I think that it would be very dangerous and treacherous ground for us to be going on thinking about ongoing cost. Even, and I do appreciate your comment, Councilmember Wood, about the startup cost of an ongoing thing. I don't even want to put my feet in the water on that issue, because it's just, then you're dealing with ongoing cost initiation. That's not what we said we would do. If we're going to go that route, I want to have a study session and have a whole council study this whole concept of one-time money on ongoing costs, because that's a whole different thing. So until that happens, I believe that the gist and the what this council has already indicated was to do, I think he wants to get your attention, is to do one time, and that means I don't know what one time means to everybody, but it means to me only a one-time cost, period. And this is one-time funds, period. There isn't any ords or buts to it. And so I'm very adamant about this. So along with Councilmember Keel, I understand that there could be, we haven't looked at this for a little bit, so maybe I think it is appropriate to look and see if there's anything in there that shouldn't really be funded. But other than that, I see all the one-time items being funded right now. The issue would be if we can find other one-time needs that the rest of the money can be spent on, not on what ongoing costs we can spend those dollars. And I'm not going there at all. So
I need to address that, please.
So with that, I certainly, like I said, if we're going to go that route, we need a study session just on whether we're going to go that on that track or not. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councilmember Wood, I know you have some comments. Councilmember Fleming hasn't made a comment yet. I'd like to go to him first. Mm-hmm.
Come on, okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would agree with Councilmember Figueroa. You know, I believe the, I'm in the chambers here.
Not me.
What the heck's going on here?
You're saying something really important that needs to be repeated.
How's that? Is that any better?
Yes.
I like the other way better. You know, I think the idea of using one-time, I mean, when you look at the one-time funding proposals, certainly they're all important and they're all significant in terms of bettering the city and the community. But I believe the one-time funding for ongoing projects is a slippery slope. Because once you get it going, then how do you fund it for the ongoing? There's a lot of unknowns that go forward into the 24, 25, and into the future. So, you know, if we're going to have this conversation about the use of one-time funding for ongoing projects, which is a real departure, if you will, from, I think, what the current policies are, then I think this does require a far more in-depth conversation and really setting new policy if we're going to go that direction. But I think the points that Councilmember Figueroa made are well done. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. I think my comments deserve some clarification because as I've been just schooled by Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa in council policy. No, I understand what the point is about one-time funds for one-time costs. That makes perfect sense. What I would like, the discussion I would like to have, and I will get specific here for a minute so you understand where my thought process is going, is one of our council priorities is recreation. Recreation is nowhere in our budget. And honestly, unless we're prepared to go ask for new monies, I'm not sure it's going to show up anytime soon. My thought process is that we could take some of the one-time monies and seed an expense account that we don't actually utilize right away, but seed that line item, and then over the next year, 2, 3, 4 years, as other monies show up, we can feed that account and eventually start some form of recreation program for our city, without necessarily going to ask for new monies or asking for less if we have to do so. That was my thought process. It's not that we would spend the money immediately, but that we would seed an account for future use. And that, I think, is worth a discussion.
Thank you. I think we've had a chance for everyone to express some thoughts. In my view, it just demonstrates it could be a good retreat topic. So where we'll have some time and can talk in a little more conversational way where folks can exchange ideas. So with that, are there any other questions before we move on to our next topic? Yes, Councilmember Keel.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Leslie, you've given us, I mean, over the years, just very good information, and I think I know the answer to the question I'm going to ask you, but I just want to hear you give it to me again. So earlier this evening, we talked about taxes that people pay, like water and sewer taxes to the city. My understanding, we don't collect water taxes and we don't collect sewer tax. There's nothing that we collect. Is that, or do we?
We collect, we have a sewer franchise fee, water franchise fee. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, and so, and everyone in the city pays those, and we collect those. So now, talk to me a little bit about how we authorize to collect that when we don't have a utility at all, either one of those.
It's through a franchise fee, and I might defer this to our city attorney, who's our franchise fee expert. So
and as a preview of coming attractions
Yes.
later on the agenda, you actually have two different buckets of money that you may be referring to. The first is the utility tax, which covers several different utilities, and then there is the utility franchise fee, which is applicable to a few of the franchises within the city. The utility tax is applied equally across the board on the gross revenues associated with the business that is doing business within the city of University Place. The franchise fee is an additional charge that at least some franchisees do a direct pass-through to those individuals or the businesses, consumers, users of the particular utility within the city. Those aren't strictly taxes per se, but those are charges that are imposed upon that franchise for the privilege of doing business within our community.
But we're charging the franchise, the business. We're not charging citizens.
Correct.
Right.
So that's the point I was trying to drive. We're not charging citizens. Now, the franchise has the freedom to just go ahead and pay us that because they are actually making money within our city doing their business. Or they can charge the users, their customers, for that fee because we're charging them.
A franchise fee is amenable to that pass-through. The utility tax, however, is a tax on the business. And so if a business seeks to recoup that, they need to increase their rate by whatever that share is.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I have this conversation with citizens all the time, and I get where they're coming from. It's still money out of, and I'll say our pockets, because I live in the city and I pay that too. Okay. But from a legal matter, and that's, people are talking legally and, what's right and all that stuff. From a legal matter, all of what we're doing is toward the business and not at all toward the citizens of the ratepayer.
You're right, especially where you're talking about the utility tax.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I think that was my understanding. I just want to make sure I understood that correctly. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good, Councilmember Keel. Before I go to Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, I just wanted to make sure if Councilmember McCluskey, if you have a question or comment, you can raise your hand. I'll try and see it from here, or turn your camera on as you choose. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Keel, I do get that same question actually here recently because of the ballot all about taxes and all that. And I've been, we pay all kinds of sewer and water. And I do tell them it is a franchise fee. It is a fee for doing business in UP. It's just like many other fees. And it's just like many other businesses. I mean, just your normal business down the road, whether it be the barber or the store or the gas station. Any fees they are charged, it gets passed down as part of the price of the consumer. That's just norm. So the utilities and the power company, Puget Sound Energy, is no different from any other business in passing it on to the consumer. But it is not a consumer fee directly from UP. Okay, so that's, there's a lot of precedent on how that gets passed down from those that are doing business with UP or others in a private business where they're getting charged from somebody garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I could, Mayor, the thing that I follow up with is, I get started with is that people say that the city is taxing them on the franchise fee or whatever it is, and that's just not true.
Okay, well, thank you. And I believe that Matt Kaiser, our city attorney, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
I did not. I was actually trying to flag your attention. I saw Councilmember McCluskey briefly unmute before you went on to the next comment.
Yeah, all right. I wasn't sure if it was that or something else. So let me invite Councilmember McCluskey to
I wanted to just make one last comment under my...
Okay.
And that is based on that, because there is a lot of confusion. It's just like how our taxes are being paid out of the tax bill, I think we did an excellent job, because people tell me they saw this as wow. And it is the 6 cents out of the dollar. I think that we should do something similar to that when it comes to sewer and water, that people are thinking they're paying taxes to us, and educate them a little bit in a very layman's terms about, what is it that these utilities get from us and how they get charged, something like that. So that's just a comment for a future discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember McCluskey, did you have a comment you'd like to make?
Thank you, Mayor Worthington. Just a brief one. I just wanted to concur that I would like the one-time expenses to align with the one-time revenues. I think that is prudent. for a city to adhere by that policy. I don't mind a study session to revisit that. The other thing is the discussions that we are having in regards to some of the nuances of the public utilities pass-throughs expenses when the city passes the franchise fees. I don't know if we, maybe on our website, there could be an explanation on that. I know there was a pushback from the TPU who inserted a rather poignant letter in regards to that, specifically identifying University Place. And it, if you read the letter, it almost appears that we're tied into their annual, 3.5%, which that was definitely not the case. So a explanation of when they look at their bill, what exactly are they seeing, and why are they seeing that from the public utilities. I'll close my comments with that. Thank you.
Appreciate that. I think that's going to close our item on the 2023-24 budget for the time being, and that'll move us on to the discussion of the 1% property tax levy. Leslie, you're with us for that too.
Okay, so moving on to the property tax increase memo. The page numbers at the bottom are listed as property tax study, page numbers 1 through, I believe it's 4 or 5 pages. So we received our preliminary certification of assessed values from Pierce County on September 12th, and the preliminary assessed value is $7,093 million. It's a lot of numbers. This is an increase from last year's assessed value, and we'll get our final assessed values in December, and then we'll get a final certification in January. So, but each year we have to go through council to set our levy rate. This year, it's a little bit different than normal because we do have Proposition 1 on the ballot. So if Proposition 1 is approved by the voters, we'll be coming back to you with the ordinance to levy the property tax at the rate of $1.28 per thousand AV per the proposition. Should it not pass, then we go back to what we normally do, which is the statutory limit, what we call the 1% increase. And those numbers would be an increase in the levy of $41,205.73, which is a 0.89% increase. Approving the increased property tax levy rate with that, what we call the 1% increase, would result in an additional $5.75 in property tax paid to the city for a home valued at about $630,000. And that's an annual $5.75 increase. So the proposed budget right now includes that the 1% increase pending the results of the vote. And when we come back on November 21st, we should have a better idea and know which resolution we would be bringing to council, whether it's the voter approved levy rate or the 1% increase levy rate. So when we come back to you on the 21st, you'll have two options, which is we'll either know that the voters approved the $1.28, and that's the resolution we bring. If not, we will be deciding whether you levy the property taxes without the 1% increase or with the 1% increase. I've included in the packet the documentation from the county that shows you how they come up with the numbers with their very confusing calculation. And then also included in that are the two sample ordinances for the two options we would have. So if you have, that concludes my report, and I'm happy to take any questions related to the property tax issue.
Thank you, Leslie. In that document, we are seeing that new construction is $30,512,000 and change. Do you know what the potential revenue is? I know the levy amount is unknown at the moment and frankly incalculable because of things that are in the air. But do you have I was looking to see if they have an estimate of dollar increase, and I just haven't been able to put my eyes on it. So.
The number they have there is about $23,000.
Okay, so $23,000 of those are new dollars as opposed to the, not 1%, by the time we do the math, it's really 0.9%, a little less than 1%. So, yeah, okay. Good enough. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, you had your hand? Did you? Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Leslie, you said something there that kind of perked me up a little bit, and that is if we come back, depending on the levy that may or may not pass, if it depends on what happens, whether we revisit this as not needing it or needing it. I thought that when we did the math, when the city did the math, that the math and the option that we voted for included the help of this 1% levy every year. Or did it not include that? So if we did not pass this, and the levy passed, would we have the monies in the future without the levy?
Yes, we would.
Okay.
What the voters would be approving is setting the rate at $1.28, and then we go back to what we do every year, where every year you now have to approve whether you're going to do the 1% increase, and that does
Well, we
increase.
do that anyway every year.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's nothing different. We would do that every year. So that's interesting. I thought that we included, the monies in this 1% were included in affording the package that we voted on with the levy monies. So you're saying we wouldn't need that?
It is. If the levy does not pass.
No, if it does pass.
If it does pass, this year the rate is set at $1.28. That includes any increases because it kind of resets it to the current assessed value and resets our amount.
You're saying it includes this 1% for this time?
It sets the new rate, so because we're taking it to the voters, we don't have to ask for a 1%. We are setting a whole new rate. So kind of the 1%, am I explaining this right, is off the table. Okay.
If it passes, the 1% is ultimately off the table, to pick up on the phrase. The idea is...
Slow down. So if the levy passes, you said the 1% property tax levy is off the table? Did I hear you
By
right?
that, you don't go through the standard November vote of increasing taxes on top of the levy. The 1.28 rounded rate that Leslie's talking about is the rate.
Is the new rate.
And then council action would be effectively to confirm that rate. I'm speaking a little loosely to say that is the levy.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. I just had a little, okay, so now you're right. So why would we, okay, now kind of the same question, but in a different way. Why would we need to revisit this if the 1.28 already includes that 1%?
We don't have to revisit it if the levy passes.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
If it does not pass, then we
No, but
go
if
back
it does
to,
pass,
yes.
if it does pass, why would we still have, you're saying we still have the option of doing the 1% again? No,
No,
we wouldn't.
not till next year. That would
No,
be.
no, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about in the future, not now.
Right.
So in the future, 2 or 3 years from now, we can revisit the 1%, even though we've already passed the 1.28.
Yes.
So why would we do that if we already taxed the citizens 1.28 that pays for the package that we presented?
And you would not have to. Each year we come to council and you determine whether you're going to increase it by the 1% or choose not to. That's,
Got it, okay.
Council can make that decision at the time.
Remind me, the proposed levy funded the safety program for how long? For, was it 10 years? Does anybody?
It's longer than that.
It goes out longer than that. Our current model forecast goes
20?
out to
Close to 20?
2040-ish, yeah.
Got it, okay,
But
thank
that
you.
assumes, I think, 1%. Councilmember Key.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate Mayor Pro Tem's question because it can be a little confusing. As I understand it, is that if this were to pass, then we do get to the levels that we want, right? And we start operating that way. The issue is that every year, there's always that 3% increase every year. So this levy is just catching us up, right, to where we need. The next year, it's going to go up 3%. So we need to consider, do we raise our statutory, thing that we can do at 1%? So yes, we'd have the 1.8, and then the following year, because the cost is going to go up 3%, do we add on the 1% that we can to stay up with where they are?
Right.
Yeah, and Councilor Keel, the 3% you're talking about is the contract rate increase for
Yes.
services that we see as a stair step each year.
Correct.
Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. I think we're good, and I think we are ready to move on to our next item, which would be the inclusive playground discussion. And Jack
Thank you.
Eklund is here to help get our discussion started with that. Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. And also I've asked Chris Saunders with the, hopefully I have this right, University Place Park and Recreation Foundation, is that right? Okay. To also join me up here that she can help answer any questions that may come up. And then Amanda, if you could bring up the PDF that you have. You just leave it on that page for now, and then I'll tell you when we can scroll. But yeah, so as I'm sure you all recall, last time we visited this topic, we had, council had identified an area in Cirque Park that could be used for an inclusive playground. Since that time, the foundation, they have a design committee that have met. They identified the various play elements they wanted to see incorporated, basically a wish list. And then they have worked with Great Western Recreation, which is both a playground designer and also they represent the company in which we get our actual other playground equipment around the city from, to come up with some designs of the playground. The group then consulted with staff, or basically Tony West and myself. They took all of our comments, incorporated everything that we had requested in there, and the good news is that they were able to incorporate our comments and also basically get everything on your list, I think, accommodated in the design.
Everything but a water feature.
But a water feature. Yeah. So almost everything. It's pretty close.
Almost everything.
And so let's, Amanda, scroll. It's going to be a little. So what we have is, that's a good one to start with. So what we have, and unfortunately this kind of just shows the layout of what the playground would be. Can you, what's that? No, that's right. Yeah. Oh, okay. Amanda, can you scroll, so it's going to near the end. Can we get the aerial one?
Councilmember Fleming has a question, I believe.
Yeah.
Jack, I hate to...
Back up, hold on a sec. Go back, the one right before the playground sign. This one's a little too busy, I think.
Actually, I'm going to have you go back to that diagram you just showed us.
Perfect.
For folks that are watching this, I think it's really important, it's an imperative actually, to point out, as you're showing the graphics here, what's the difference between an inclusive playground and a regular playground? Because for someone who's not familiar with that and they're looking at these pictures, they're going, so what's the difference? What's the big deal? And that first picture you showed really kind of highlights some pretty key points about what is the difference regarding an inclusive playground. So if you could just address that as we go through these pictures, and start with that first picture if you would, please.
Yeah. See.
Not that
Chris,
one.
Do you want to just kind of quickly on inclusive playground?
So an inclusive playground, actually, a conventional playground allows about 80% of our kids to play on the playground. An inclusive playground opens it up to about 94% of our kids, which are the kids who also have cognitive and mobility issues. We're not building a disabled playground. We are building a playground that all kids, including those with disabilities, can play in. There are actually 14 different designations in our school district in disability. And each one of those designations we try to address in this playground. A couple of things you'll be aware of as you look at this picture is that there's more open space, that everything is not tight together, but that the kids, those who have mobility devices can move around. Some of the equipment has ramps rather than stairways. One of the pieces of equipment actually has a platform where children with a mobility disability can get on and then get on the equipment. So those are some of the basic understandings of an inclusive playground. If you were to go visit a different built playground, you would pretty distinctly notice the open spaces, the ability to get around the equipment. Last time we came to the council, Councilmember Keel really spoke about that it's really important that they can move readily. The other thing that you'll find is that in this picture, we have that is a zip line, but it's a zip line for an inclusive playground. In the kind of the middle, in the bottom with the orange bar going through. And it has a seat that a child who needs to be better, a plastic molded seat where a child can not fall out of so easily and enjoy doing a zip line. Next to it is a merry-go-round that is recessed into the ground, so it's flush. And a wheelchair can be put, thank you, a wheelchair can be put on that, as well as other kids can be on it as they play in the merry-go-round. So various pieces of equipment are very important in each of the processes. If we scroll down a little further, we have a really special piece of equipment that's been allowed to be added to this playground.
Yeah,
Can we
Amanda, go down to the next slide.
It's called the Wave, is that right?
Yeah.
Jack? Yeah, the kids can climb over, they can go under this, yeah, right there. They can go over, they can go under, they can go through that platform, the orange and gray platform, yeah, there we go. This particular piece of equipment holds 46 kids to play on it.
Wow.
And it is just a gem for some kids who like to have a lot of activity, to have a place to kind of like do a little like fort, but it's an open fort, so nobody's hiding or anything. And it's actually a really amazing piece. I am just so excited we've been able to add it. So like that. Does that help, Stan?
Yeah, and one thing just to add is what's really, I think, exciting about this for our community. You know, an inclusive playground is not, like Chris says, not a, it's not like a playground where this piece is for a certain group of folks and this is for somebody else and this is for somebody else. It's really designed that, like Chris said, like 97% of the kids in the community can all enjoy it. So, and when we look at the overhead later on, I can kind of talk about, we do have our, the RCO grant that we had, a portion of this would be covering, which has some more conventional playground elements, but as you'll be able to see as we go through these, the renderings, it'll look seamless, and they all have elements that everyone can enjoy.
Yes.
Which is really, really a neat, will be a real neat feature for our parks. On that, the climbing structure in particular, like Chris was saying, that was one that was originally part of the RCO. It was purely just a net climber, which in itself was a neat element, but it really had little opportunity for especially folks with limited mobility to access. And so that's why it was really neat that we were able to fit this in, because it does take quite a bit more of a footprint than the original climber, but it still gets that climbing element that we wanted, but then adds a lot more to it. So, Amanda, if you want to, so this view actually stay in this one. This is, for the most part, the structure you see to the majority of the thing to the left there is the basically what we had designed for the original RCO grant. And it did have some inclusive elements to it. In fact, I think some of the elements on the wish list were already in that,
Yes.
so, which was nice. One thing that got added, and you'll see throughout this, we do have the shades that were added to the structures, because that is a sensory issue, right?
Yep.
So let's, Amanda, let's go to the next slide if we can.
In fact, I remember last time we came to you, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa was saying, can we enhance the RCO side of the playground with more equipment? And this design has done that. So it even makes it more of a seamless playground. We talk about different sides, but when it's all built, it will not look different at all. You won't walk on and go, oh, this is for those kids and this is for, and you won't feel like that at all.
So here's another view of the, this is more of the RCO, but then you can see in the background the merry-go-round and the zip line. Another thing to talk about, we do have, there's music elements that are included in this, as well as elements with light, where you can see that little kind of windmill-looking thing will have light shine through. So those are other, and those are both things that were in our original design, but things that are also, desired in an inclusive playground. So you have other kind of forms of, I don't know, stimulation, but sensory inputs. So let's go to the next one, Amanda. Just kind of scroll through some of these, just different views. So this one here highlights more of the same one. So let's go to the next one. So now we're starting to go, this is the structure that was, this is now looking more at structures that were added. As you can see, although the other structure had some ramping and some transferability, this one is fully ramped. I know, and so any folks in wheelchairs or anything could get any aspect of the slide itself. You see a swing on the upper corner. That's an arch swing that then has a seat that could be transferred to with a lot of folks. If we go to the next picture, just another view that you can see now. We can see some of the regular swings we have. Let's go to another one.
And Chuck, I think Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa has a comment or question.
Yeah.
Just a couple. It looks like the area that the borders of this is rectangular. Is that a true shape of this playground?
It's not quite rectangular. And when we see the aerial, I'll be able to talk about it.
It's not exactly rectangular.
No.
Okay, because I was going to say that's kind of an odd shape, but for a playground. But anyway, okay. The other one would be, I think it's great. It's seamlessly to, it doesn't take away from any type of child, and you want them to mix as much as possible for the real life of playing with children. However, there could be some busy times, especially in great weather, and those without mobility issues could, this whole playground could be taken over by those without any mobility issues. That's what I try to say. So we're doing this so that certain children with mobility issues could have access to this, but if it's being taken by those that don't, how do you deal with that? And have you thought through that?
I think on a lot of the design elements, it's so that you have your pathways and your ramps are wide enough that it can accommodate multiple people passing. The fact that we have the various play elements spread around and in various play structures. And so that's why it's critical that you have something for everybody at each place. But I think we would fully expect and hope that we have a lot of kids here of all types.
Right.
And so
Okay. You don't
I
see
think
that as
just
being
by
a problem?
What's that?
You wouldn't think that that's going to be a problem?
I don't think so. I think just
Okay.
by the size of what we're looking at would be
Okay.
in itself kind of address that.
Thank you.
I don't know exactly what the footprint is, but it's something around 8,500 square feet. I mean, according to our game time people, they say this is a large project.
Okay.
So while we couldn't very well say to all kids who can, just move around readily, you have to leave so that the other kids, you can't do that either.
Right.
But
We're doing a pretty good sized playground. Thank you. I was going through my mind here.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Keel.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for this presentation. Every time I see every step, I just get more and more excited about it.
Yeah, me too.
As most everyone in this room knows why I'm excited. Question on the ramp, and I love that for the wheelchair access. And I think you all are taking care of this. Because I can't imagine you wouldn't be, but again, just asking the question. After the wheelchair gets up there, sometimes the danger is now that you're off the ground and, there might be some edges that may not stop a wheelchair. You can just make sure you just don't go over the edge, after you get a few feet off the ground. So I just want to make sure that in the design, every corner is looked at to make sure that does not happen, right? And the other thing is once you get in there a certain way, you got to have an egress too as well, right? So can they turn around? Or do they keep going through and get out to the other end? That kind of thing. Just thinking through that whole ingress and egress, kind of there.
So to address this, because there may be questions, the designer was actually selected by Cal Ripken Senior Foundation, who is partnering with us in this. They have made 111 recreation facilities for children in the country. They have done some in inclusive playgrounds and inclusive or adaptive ballparks also. And they are, they're the ones who really are aware of those specific issues. And this is why we are so excited we're partnering with them, because they have the expertise, the experience, they have the partnerships in the vendors that they work with. And it was just a really wonderful moment when all of a sudden they said, well, we want you to work with Game Time. And that was the organization that had planned the RCO game, playground. It was like, oh wow, this is very cool. So we're partnering with, we're not bringing two different equipment companies together in one playground. It's all one.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
And they are very aware of this. Game Time is the biggest playground equipment company in the country.
Great. And I do want to say I appreciate Mayor Pro Tem's question about the takeover. And to me, having to deal with this all these years, to me, it's just the basic kind of thing that you learn on any playground. Yeah. And that is, all the kids are going to have to share, right? I mean, and even in a regular playground, you got kids running over and trying to take over. So you just got to learn just basic stuff that you learned in kindergarten, about sharing and working together. So,
Okay, good. Thank you, Councilmember Keel.
Amanda, if you want to advance the next slide, maybe too, we can see a little bit
And
more.
while we have this little break in the presentation, Councilmember Wood has a comment as well.
Yeah.
Actually, just a quick question. The surface, what is the surface made over? How does it feel and how durable? Can you tell me anything about the surface that the playground will be on?
Yeah, and so that was one of the comments we had from our maintenance staff is originally they were proposing a like a poured-in-place type of padded surface, which has some advantages where you can have some more decorative elements added to it. The problem we found out, though, we did some research with Metro Parks folks that have used some of that, and it becomes a little more problematic to maintain if somebody vandalizes or wears. And so the surface you're seeing here, now the colors, I suspect it won't be gray. We'll probably have it a little more, they're going to look at some designs first because you can vary some colors and make some patterns there. But it's those padded tiles, similar to what you would see that's currently out there at Sunset Terrace or at the playground at Colgate. And so that's a nice, it's a nice, safe, soft surface, but also one that all, the wheelchairs and other kind of mobility devices can traverse over.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Nothing else, then we'll continue on.
Yeah. So on this angle, a couple things I want to point out, and I might actually go ahead. So this, the little boat-looking thing here, is a platform that is it's kind of like the closest thing to a swing that you can be in a mobility device. So it can rock back and forth. It can have seats for, I think it has spots where a wheelchair can be secured, but then also folks can sit there. And so that is a really cool element there. I don't know how much it swings, but it rocks back and forth essentially.
Called a rocker.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is this slide right here that it looks a little bumpy, and that's because that has made out of rollers, I believe.
Yep.
And Chris, I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Particularly kids who have cognitive issues sometimes enjoy, just all sorts of kids enjoy being on this roller slide. It has a different feel to it than a regular slide. And it's neat to be able to have added it into this playground because it addresses some of the different disability issues than some of the others. Some kids enjoy rocking, some kids enjoy going down a bumpy slide, some kids enjoy going down a slide. There's a little further over the green slide is a double slide so that a parent and a child can slide down together. Some of those things that just really help give a chance for experiences that they don't have in other playgrounds. So,
Amanda, if you want to go to the next one, just another view. Let's see. So this shows highlights a little bit more of that double slide. And then let's go to the next one. So another element that they're looking at is adds a little bit of both customization, but then another tactile element is they're proposing on putting some mixed in amongst the play structures, some three-dimensional animals throughout that then kids can go, and they're fully little sculpture, little different ones. And go to the next one, Amanda. And these are just kind of give it a little bit more kind of theme and playfulness. And you go to one more. I think we have 3 examples. I think it's 4 examples. A little squirrel, and then a little frog. But that's the type of thing that would be kind of in and amongst the play structure that adds that extra little kind of finishing touch, but also a nice tactile element as well. And then Amanda, go to the next slide. Okay, so here's the aerial. And one of the things, zoom out just a little, that's very good. Okay, so this is generally the same size that what came forward to council last time. There was, we did identify some areas in just this lower area in order to accommodate the zip line. This got expanded about 5 to 6 feet just in this back here. However, that's still well away from our existing park facilities of both the volleyball court and the picnic shelter. So the picnic shelter is generally about right here. The volleyball court would be off the screen there. And so we've looked at that, and that easily we were able to accommodate that. And then the other element here that got expanded is this corner over here. There was a little section here that was not originally part of that because there was a power box that we were initially thought might have been difficult to relocate. But we looked into it, and it actually is not a big deal to relocate. And actually, from a maintenance standpoint, it eliminates getting some dead spots for like grass or something, because this would basically be near where the fence line is of the current parking lot. And then this area here is right adjacent to the big concrete walkway that comes into Cirque Park heading toward the ball fields. And then this cutout here is where the restrooms are, and then there's still the space for the additional restroom that they're planning on doing. The other thing to note is they would look at an archway that could both name the park and kind of signify here's the entrance. Would be in this corner, probably set at about a 45, because that's the orientation from the parking lot coming into the park area. The other thing to look at, this area right here is the area that was identified for the RCO grant.
Yep.
And so we're staying within those boundaries there. There is a slight adjustment we may have to, that we're talking to RCO folks about this new climbing element. But they've indicated that shouldn't be an issue to change the scope to do that, because it's still providing a climbing element that was just adding some more things to it. So I think, at least from an aerial standpoint, now one thing, like I mentioned, the padding will likely have different colors. I think in general the folks have liked the colors that are proposed of the actual structures, but that is not necessarily set in stone at this point. They're still finalizing that. I'm not sure, Amanda, if there's anything else to see on the next one. I think it's just showing probably more information. So that shows it could be something like that. It could probably have a little more elements to it too, but
Yeah, this isn't, I asked the designer to add a slide that gave an idea of what an archway would look like. This is less than I envisioned that we'll have. So, yeah, pretty fundamental here.
This part is
We'll get a little splashier, I hope.
All right. Well, great. Well, thank you. I know Councilmember Fleming has a question or a comment.
I do, Mr. Mayor. Quick question, Chris or anyone. When do you anticipate breaking ground on this, and when do you anticipate a completion?
So that's one thing that's one of the things that's both been good news with the RCO folks, because we expect the RCO grant, that paperwork to come through the actual agreement within about a week here. So that's going to be getting going. And then that's the other thing that's exciting with the Cal Ripken group is they bring quite a bit of horsepower with them from the fundraising standpoint. Yeah. And they were very confident that the type of fundraising for this could happen quickly. So this may be, they were fairly confident that this would be like a next summer type of construction, maybe like a July, August timeframe, I think, right?
Yeah, I think next summer, it just depends. We can't build before May. Okay. Just because, according to the representatives of Game Time, is that they can't actually do the build before May because of our rain. And that, of course, is an interesting factor, because then some years it rains later, so it'll be a little up in the air. Once we get started, it'll be done in about a month. So
a month?
Yeah. We won't start until we're fully funded, and then it'll be a month. So, yep.
Well, it's a very exciting project, and would be a great addition for us.
Yep.
So, at least in my mind, I think there's a few other council members might feel the same way. So, but this is excellent. Well, we are looking at the clock, ready to move on, but is there anything in closing? I don't want to, you've hung in there for getting your time in front of us.
I just
and
really
don't
want
push
to
out.
thank all of the contributors to this design. We had a parent group that worked with us, and with Dr. Holly Galbraith is our, what is it?
Consultant?
No, special education coordinator and the school district, and she was able to reach out to a whole bunch of organizations that could give information into this particular design, and people looked at it broadly, and they were very content with it. And so we have had parent groups and Special Olympics and so on, all contributing into it. They're very excited to see it taking place, and so are we. So,
Yes, as we are too. So we look forward to hearing about it, and the prospect of having this open within a year is quite exciting and actually quite surprising to me. So, excellent. Well, great. Well, thank you so much.
The
Jack,
only other
yes.
thing I forgot to mention is this has been presented to the Parks Commission at their last meeting, and they unanimously expressed their support for it as well. So.
Good. Thank you. That's important. I'm very glad to hear that as well.
all right.
Ken, well, thank you, and for all the hard work, and it shows. The design is quite impressive, and to think that everyone else agrees as well. Good job putting it together. Well, Council, I think we're ready to move on to our next item, and which is all about our legislative agenda. Mr. Kaiser, are you going to help us with that? Oh, excuse me, Mr. Suggs.
I will call on Matt Kaiser if needed on the, and they probably will, assuming we get into those kinds of questions. So Council, tonight's legislative agenda, our draft resolution of the priorities that we've assembled. We've obtained feedback from I think all of council on this, at least initially, individual feedback, and we appreciate those thoughts. So tonight here for study is a list of 5 priorities that we've identified. There is the top 3 in this resolution, which you have in front of you. The first 3 are AWC priorities, which we're saying that the city will support. One is to maintain local control over local planning. As you remember, this last legislative session, there was an attempt to usurp some of that authority. And so we're asking that we're supporting AWC's efforts to ensure that we at the local level have control over the planning decisions that are made at the local level. Unless I'll stop there and ask if there's any questions before I move to the next one. But we can.
Questions, anyone? Councilmember Wood.
Just reading this, I just have one word I think should go away, and that's the word substantially in line 4. I think the word substantially allows flexibility and wiggle room. I just think we just oppose the state changing zoning period. It's my thought. Thank you.
All right.
If that's the order. I'm just expressing concern there. Yeah. I don't want people trying to find places, oh, that's not substantial. So,
Okay. All right. Anything else? Are we ready to?
All right. Number 2 legislative priority that the AWC has got on their list that we're supporting is to address the impacts of the Blake decision regarding possessing controlled substance. And you see there the city supports the request for investments in statewide services and statewide support system to address addiction and behavioral health needs. So I'll just stop and ask if there's any thoughts, questions, comments.
Any questions, comments on number 2 with regards to the Blake decision?
And the number 3 AWC priority is to enhance public safety. This is in regards to vehicle pursuits, using the reasonable suspicion standard. And also, this is also to fund regional campuses to train Washington police. And also lastly, the city itself requests additional funding and funding options for the provision of local police services. So there's a lot in that very compact item, but enhancing public safety. So I'll just stop and ask if there's any questions on that one or
Questions,
thoughts.
authority in that? We're good.
All right, and then moving on to number 4 is the city's requesting that the legislature make permanent the REIT flexibility that they granted in 2021. At that time, they provided a provision that provided cities with flexibility through 2023 to use a portion of cities' REIT revenue for maintenance and operations of parks and capital facilities, which we're utilizing, as you learned earlier this evening in Leslie's presentation. However, that authority is going to go away at the end of 2023. So what we're asking for is that flexibility continue. We think that it would be very useful for local government, especially the city of University Place, so we're putting that on the list.
Okay. Questions about that? I have one, well, maybe several. I've looked at this, and I can appreciate us using that on a temporary basis that the state has made available to every jurisdiction in this state. The more I think about this, the less I like it, and the reasons for that is I believe that currently it provides capital facility funding, which we need. When we use it in a different manner for maintenance or something of that nature, we still need the capital facility funding. And there's a nexus, a connection between where this money comes from in the terms of real estate REIT or real estate excise taxes that are collected at the time of sale with the need for the capital improvement. So it seems to make some sense to me. Whether we pull money out of one pocket and put it in another, okay, sometimes that's helpful. But the fact is, we're still going to need it. We still use it. I don't think we get ahead. But I do think we lose some credibility. And so credibility with the legislature and with certain members of the community as well. My own particular view is, I don't think we need to do this. We can do it this year. It's in the budget. It's in the proposed budget. I don't have a problem on a one-time basis. There is the argument that if we get the authority, then that doesn't mean we have to come back and use it. Everyone can just have it, and if they use it, fine. But from my perspective, no. I don't think it's the right step in this particular one. But that's just me. Anybody else? Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. I support that mainly because there's always capital projects, as you mentioned. And the good faith that was put in at the onset of this particular, how this monies will be used, developers and others did have the intent, and we in the cities have the intent to use that for that purpose. I think that that loses that faith, and I understand where you're coming from as far as our what we said we would do that money. That being said, though, in our budget earlier, REIT was used to extend the street fund. So if we, as a council, really believe that, okay, personally, I like to see this move forward because I think there's maybe cities that really want to have that, and I would always support other cities to have that flexibility if they want to. But like you said, we can make a decision on our own as a policymaker. I think if it passes, I think we need to have a study session and make it a policy so there's no doubt what we will use that money for, to keep it going for capital or otherwise. I think that is essential, so we're not debating that anymore. That being said, it's kind of dangerous to pass a budget with that REIT in there and then go back. I think that as we finalize our budget, we need to make a real decision. If this is where we're heading, then we need to step back on that REIT portion of the street fund. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Keel.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I understand. I think I understand your comment. It feels like for many years we were arguing one thing, and now that we have it on a temporary basis, now we're arguing against it. That's how it feels to me, and I think it's good for each individual city to make their own determination of how or if they're going to use the flexibility. But I think that having the flexibility is a good thing statewide, so that some cities may not be where we are. You know, they may want and need, very much so, to use those dollars in a broader way, like we're doing now, because we made that argument that we could use them, and we did. And so I happen to be real partial to kind of the AWC approach to everything, and that is, let's cast the widest net so that we can incorporate everybody's needs, and then once we have that, then people can pick and choose which tool they want to use in the toolbox to move their city forward. So I'd be open to hearing more about kind of where you are with that and how you feel, the way that you feel. So,
Thank you. Appreciate the comment. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Well, so I can appreciate putting more tools in the toolbox, and so the cities that choose to do that may be in a different place, different set of priorities, and as we all learn from our experience in local government, every one of us is unique in certain aspects. There's certainly, every city, every local government has its own unique twist, its own unique situation. So more tools are good there. Got that. So I don't know, though, that I'm still inclined to say I don't think we need it. I think we need it in the I'm not saying we UP. I'm saying we local governments. So
okay.
So there you still can get that handled in your need for capital improvements, and if that's street improvements, park improvements, or whatever gets defined into there's I think two different types of REIT, but they essentially do the same. They have specific purposes, excuse me, but they are targeted to capital improvements. So, okay, fair enough. Just wanted to bring it up. I'm not finding a lot of folks claiming on my bandwagon, so I think I know where we're headed. And Councilmember McCluskey, would you like to weigh in on this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I agree with keeping the permanent REIT flexibility in the legislative agenda for the comments that have been made on the dais, and also for even our own city's internal flexibility and setting priorities so that we will have a little more choice in decision making in regards to maintaining our infrastructure or, allowing it to be placed onto the capital improvement project plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments. Jack, someone's helping them? Okay. Thank you. I think someone's having difficulty with the elevator due to the time. So excuse me for... all right. So very good. Well, that brings us to the next item.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. So the fifth and final item on the list is our capital project request, legislative priority request. Number one is Day Island Bridge design, which was on the list last year. We're requesting $1 million, seeking $1 million for the design and the replacement of the Day Island Bridge. This is, I think, well known to this council. I won't go through the entire description of the project. I think council is very familiar with this. So that's the Day Island Bridge. The total project cost is estimated to be $15 million. So this would be $1 million for the design, and it looks like a rather large number, but actually in consultation with the state, they were concerned that the number may not be large enough. So I just wanted to let you know that we went through quite a bit of examination of that. And there's quite a bit of environmental studies that are needed along with this. So apparently it's more involved, and I was surprised at the size of this number, but I checked with Jack Eklund, our city engineer, and he confirmed that yes, $1 million is the number. So that's the Day Island Bridge. There's three projects here that are being requested. Sewer infrastructure, $1 million though. This is for this 57th Avenue sewer extension project. And if you recall, this last year we made through the legislature, through our legislative delegation, we were able to secure $100,000 for the design of that sewer. 57th Avenue is down in the southeast portion of our city, and the project would also provide sewer for that unsewered area just north of the Meadow Park Golf Course, which is at our southern city limits at that location. And there's a whole neighborhood down there that a number of properties that are unsewered. So that would be an excellent project. By the way, we've also requested we've also simultaneously looking at other sources as well through the county's sewer matching program, where we've put that project in the basket as well, and we're going to see how that application, whether that application is successful. But we want to keep it on this list.
Okay.
We now have money for at least the design. So I'll just stop there before I move on to the third and final one.
Just a couple of quick things. This list, I think, is applicable, or a question, is this list applicable to both federal, state, and I guess the county in the example you just used?
It is. Okay. It is. We are looking at all sources in all areas.
And the 57th Street sewer extension, do we know, will it matter if that happens to be in the Tacoma sewer service area? I think it might be.
That is, I believe it's still in the Pierce County sewer service area. Anything west of Orchard, I believe is still in what they call the Leech Creek Interceptor area for the county.
All righty.
Yeah.
Very good. I was just thinking the proximity to the Tacoma city limits and
It's
the
very
properties
close,
there. So.
but I think it's just over the ridge.
Yep. All right. Very good. Anything else, gentlemen? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. If we were fortunate to receive the monies and build out that sewer extension, will the neighborhood hook up? Because there is a cost to each property owner to hook up. It's not there's a big cost to it. So was there any survey done whether if we bring in sewer that they actually will spend the money to hook up? Are we extending a sewer that's going to be unused for 25 years until new people come in and figure out we need to do this?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mayor Pro Tem. I don't have the answer to that, but we'll get an answer and get back to you on that.
Excuse me.
Back to council. It's an excellent question.
Other comments, questions at this point? I'm not seeing those.
So there's one more project, and that's the Chambers Creek roundabout. This is at where Lower Chambers Creek Road and 64th Street intersect. And at that location, we're seeking $1 million for design and construction of that roundabout. There is a little bit of property acquisition that's necessary as well to provide that roundabout, that location. And hopefully we can secure funding. We are also looking for multiple funding sources on that. So we're not just applying in one location. So this is a request to see if our legislative delegation can help us in Olympia with some state funding for this.
Thank you. Any comments, Council?
I have an overall.
Councilmember Wood.
So going back up to enhancing public safety, and this is honestly probably too premature for this legislative agenda, but we were discussing earlier briefly the Tacoma City Council passing an ordinance that basically forbid public camping within much of their city limits. And what I see potentially happening is kind of a balkanization between local cities and everything as everybody tries to respond, or we wait and see how legal challenges go or something else. But something like that seems to me to beg for a regional solution. And while I definitely am a proponent of local control wherever possible, I think this is one of those things where, a state or regional program to help address the issue in such a way that supports, I don't know, I'm thinking out loud, which is a problem. Yeah. So work with me on this one. But I'm just curious what my fellow council members think, if this is something we even want to try this year, or if we want to hold that for a future.
Councilmember Keel.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And Councilman Wood, thank you for bringing this topic up. When I first heard this, I immediately went into a panic, and I'm not a highly panicky guy. I think I'm pretty cool and collected, and gathered. But I went into a panic when I heard this, because if that ordinance is already in place in that city, and I know there may be some argument back and forth, but if it's in place, I mean, it's going to go in right away, and if they start cleaning up, pushing people out, they are coming our way. Is my feeling, strong feeling, very educated, good, feeling that it's going to happen. And Mayor, I just, I am very much interested in working with staff to figure out how we deal with this now. Because, I mean, we'll wake up one morning and we'll have a bunch of tents, and RVs and cars and all lean-tos and all that kind of stuff with barbecue grills, and not wanting to move. And then we'll be stuck with the issue of trying to deal with them. So I think this is something we need to pay attention to right now and get out in front of it.
Okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate both those comments. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too echo the concern that if that in fact is about to happen or has happened, there is a second and third order effect to that decision. So I think delaying that debate is really going to be a detriment to our community as well as to our citizens. So I agree, we need to get out ahead of this sooner than later. And I wouldn't want to wait till winter time like January or February to have that conversation. I would say sooner than later.
All right. Well, thank you for the input. Certainly, this is gosh, I used to work with a police chief who always talked about squeezing the balloon.
That's right.
And, it doesn't get any smaller. It just moves. It just squirts out the ends or whatever it might be. And that is, I think, what we all envision in this particular setting. There's a fair amount to this, and it's not, if it was easy, it wouldn't still be here with us. So I agree, certainly, we need to look at how we can be as proactive as possible in the current situation and react, nonetheless, react. That's going to take a little bit of time and attention, but we'll see in our agenda setting process if we can't move on this as quickly as possible. We have some things to get familiar with and get well acquainted with what our neighbors are doing and what the courts have said and what we can do and how does those things apply in our community. So every place, I think we said a few minutes ago, is unique, and that counts us too. So, okay. Well, we'll work on this as expeditiously as possible. Anything else before we, outside of that, and I think, by the way, this may be a little different issue than, though it falls under lobbying in a sense, or a legislative agenda, I should say. It's a little different than that. Nonetheless, we're here, and I think it fits in the subject category. But I don't know that I'm hearing anything that we're amending the proposed legislative agenda on, despite my best efforts. So it sounds to me like we move forward with this being adopted as drafted. So.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. With that, we can move on to talking about the Comcast franchise. We're just 1 minute behind the agenda schedule.
I don't know how that happened. Good evening, Council. Matt Kaser, City Attorney. Before you tonight for study is a franchise with the City of University Place and Comcast Communications. If there is a certain amount of surprise in my voice, there's probably good reason to be. So a brief history lesson for you to put that into context. The city has previously had a franchise with Comcast that it executed all the way back in July of 2003. That was a 10-year franchise. That franchise expired in July of 2013. If you're doing the quick math, that would show that there is approximately a 9-year period in which the city has not had a franchise with Comcast. However, amongst the other jurisdictions within Pierce County, University Place is not the only jurisdiction that had an extended absence with a franchise with Comcast. There are several others. And shortly before the pandemic struck in earnest, we began to get word from other jurisdictions that were primarily members of the Rainier Communications Commission that they were looking to sort of negotiate a common franchise agreement with Comcast. The city of DuPont led the way initially with that, and then other jurisdictions started realizing we haven't had one either. So through the RCC, the various municipalities, the participating members, reached a standardized franchise agreement with Comcast, and then left it to each individual jurisdiction to negotiate certain modifications, add-ons, subtractions, etc., that were applicable to their own jurisdiction. And University Place is certainly one of those. To outline for the benefit of council at least a number of the key attributes of the franchise that's before you for consideration tonight, let me hit the high points for you. Most of the changes that you are seeing in this franchise are what I would consider to be under the hood type changes. Since that franchise was initially enacted all the way back in July of 2003, there have been a number of changes on the legal landscape, ranging from FCC orders to public disclosure to right-of-way management and the like. Many of those under the hood changes are ones that we generally have adopted, whether not expressly within the language of the franchise, but certainly as a matter of practice. There's obviously some exceptions, but many of those are not necessarily visible to end users and the like. The ones that I do want to call your attention to, just kind of the big picture deal points that I do want to call your attention to. The first is the franchise term itself. The franchise that's before you tonight is approximately a 10-year franchise. That franchise would go into effect upon mutual execution between the city and Comcast and run through December 31st of 2032. And then thereafter, it would roll over on a month-to-month basis. So we would continue to have a franchise beginning in 2033, assuming that there were no new provisions. I will disclose to the council that a draft of what's in your packet tonight was shipped off to Comcast last week for final comment review after we did all the track changes. So I haven't heard back from them expressly, but everything memorializes those track changes. So if there may be some slight changes from when the final matter comes before council, if that's where council wants to go with it. The second thing I want to call council's attention to, because we discussed it earlier in the evening, was franchise fees. We currently charge a franchise fee at 5%. That amount is capped by law. There is no change to that. And it's worth repeating that those amounts are separate from the utility tax. One of the under the hood changes I do want to call council's attention to are indemnification insurance provisions. We had a number of departmental touches, outside touches on this, including our insurance carrier, our engineering staff, our communications team. There are changes there. They have been vetted by our insurance carrier. There are changes to how right-of-way construction is enacted. Many of these are sort of in that under the hood type aspect, but still important nonetheless to comment on. Related to permits, they have to obtain permits for any work done within the jurisdiction. Undergrounding. Comcast is required to essentially co-locate where those facilities are generally available. And relocation for projects. There are provisions in there where they are required to relocate on notice for our various projects. The highlight, if you will, of this, and where most of the work went in that contributed in part to the delay, or in large part to the delay, revolves around the concept of PEG fees. PEG, Public Education and Government, or as it's referred to within the franchise, simply has EG fees, with the public part taken out. PEG fees in broad form are a charge that we can charge upon a utility, or to a cable franchisor, and they can pass on to the customer. And Comcast has passed those on for the provision of certain public education and government type services. UPTV is a prime example of that. Those charges can be used only for capital expenditures. Our current PEG fee under the franchise is simply 50 cents per month per customer. And if you have a Comcast bill, you'll see in there that's the charge for 50 cents. As you've heard throughout a number of briefings on the city's finances, cable revenues are decreasing. The number of customers not the revenues are decreasing, the number of customers are decreasing, which has an impact. We were alerted by the RCC, and the RCC is in the process of changing their underlying financing model. And the big change that you will see on the PEG fees is rather than a flat fee per customer per month, it is measured as a percentage of revenue, which more accurately keeps tabs and keeps track with the various declining customer base that you have been seeing. So the idea is that we can still continue to provide for those capital type assets in light of a declining customer base over time. Within the PEG fee, it's not set forth expressly within the franchise, but there's certainly a movement within the RCC. that with a subscription model, I use that term loosely again, being changed, that of that PEG rate, the proposed PEG rate in the franchise that was heavily negotiated is with a new amount of 0.525%. Of that 0.525%, 0.375% of that would go to the RCC. And that's analogous to what we have currently. That difference would then be retained by the city of University Place. That are back of the envelope numbers, and they're more than back of the envelope numbers, come out to about $15,000 a year for capital improvements to put on things such as UPTV. Now, on the topic of UPTV, there's one significant change worth highlighting within the franchise, and that is following execution of the franchise and on notice to Comcast, and there's a built-in delay, we have set aside channel 321 for UPTV and high definition. Currently, UPTV is standard def. We're going out right now over channel 21, standard definition. This would upscale that to both standard definition and high definition after notice and other infrastructure pieces get into place. From a local egg perspective, this is a considerable upgrade, and under the franchise, those channels are specifically reserved under that franchise. One other thing I want to highlight for the benefit of council, there are other egg channels that are out there that are being broadcast. PCTV is probably the most notable. There are provisions within the franchise to continue to preserve those with specific call-outs. And I'm just going through my notes here. So with that, and I know, and one final change I do want to highlight, there is one removal from the original franchise. The original franchise had language in there related to fiber optic return lines and INET type things with the school district. You will be seeing, potentially as early as next meeting, a franchise coming through that at the school district's request to provide for a service delivery of that content. So those lines would be removed from the Comcast franchise, and the school district would be pursuing that independently. And that's through a separate provider. That franchise is working its way through. We're working on some language on that. We'll talk about that once that's ready for council. With that, and I know the hour is late, I'm happy to stand for any questions that council may have.
So, council, I know we have, currently I'm the chair for the Rainier Communications Commission. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa has been chair of the Rainier Communication Commission. Councilmember Fleming was an original member of the Rainier Communication, founding member, if I remember right, and chair for some period of time as well. So we might have questions, we might not. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Boy, do we ever. No. You mentioned in terms of lane fiber or whatever lines that Comcast may lay in the right-of-way. What I didn't hear you mention is the crosscuts across the road, as my old memory serves me. And Jack can correct me very easily, but when you get 7 cuts or more, you start breaking down the road bed of the road. In the past, we either prohibited or they had to pay to have that crosscut put in there. I didn't hear you mention that in the new franchise.
I will double check, but I think we preserve that. I'm looking at Jack because Jack's helped me with that franchise, and I think we preserve that because we're pretty insistent on that component.
Yeah, we kind of mirrored what we had before, but we haven't been able to do when we had that one point when we were able to either charge an extra fee or make them pay a lot more. We ended up getting pushback from a legal standpoint, so we weren't able to do that as much. But we are able to still maintain we have expanded what our standard is, so we have to treat them the same as any other utility cut, and that's how it's in the franchise. So it's our standard, our T-patch, but they still have to fall so that they still they can't patch in a way that puts it on a lane line or on a wheel path. So they have to go either a full lane or half lane. And then if it's perpendicular, they have to have at least a 2-foot minimum T-patch, so outside of the trench width. So it's still competent. We've expanded it, but we've kind of pushed what we can do from what's kind of industry standard. But that language is still in there that they must comply with all those things.
Did we also limit them to 3 cuts?
That's not jumping out at me in this.
Not anymore. We had tried at one point, and we got pushed back from legal folks on that.
Our legal or their legal?
Theirs. Years ago. That's many years.
That's
before
many years
Matt's
ago.
time, but,
That's probably worth revisiting since you got a new franchise going to preserve our roads.
We do require them, if they're in proximity though, reasonable proximity, that they have to combine them into a single patch. And that is something we still have the ability to. But where the pushback came from, if it was a very, very large development, it may be 3 or 4, may be still reasonable. But yeah, so we have some protections that we were able to, but we've kind of pushed as much as we can. But it is, we have the same provisions that we have the current franchise in there for that.
I would just say, since you've reopened the franchise, and I know the cost of repairing that, if there's a way to include it maybe this time around, it might be worth pursuing, just to protect the city and keep our costs down.
We certainly can look into that.
I have some questions, but first, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
It's okay. It's getting late. Matt, when you mentioned about they would be required to relocate if we had a project going through there, at whose cost, theirs or ours?
Generally, it's their cost. Well, under the provisions of the revised franchise, if we have a capital project, just by way of illustration, in the amount of $50,000 or $500,000 or more, hard to get the zero, we have to give them 120 days notice and say, hey, we're doing work. You might want to move your stuff. Now, I will tell you that our current language provides for a 60-day notice. They asked for 120 days. We pushed back hard on that. And one of the things we told them is you might not want that extra 60 days because we do a lot of our design work in-house and our team is very good at that and very efficient. So you might be unnecessarily relocating. But if you're really sure you want the 120 days, we'll give you 120 days. But that's still at their expense.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I guess a question to begin with. Could you review with us again the egg?
Egg. Yeah. Once upon a time, egg was PEG, P-E-G, Public Education Government. In this agreement, it's referred to as egg. The P comes out, the public part. And the way to think about this is if you go back into the recesses of time, there is the general public access component. The stereotypical Wayne's World late night public access, anybody can plug something in and play it. The challenge these days is that there's things such as YouTube and other social media outlets that folks simply aren't taking advantage of the public access channels. So they're resorting to those. In the course of discussions, we changed the name, not as a legal matter, if you will, but certainly as a convention within the franchise to reflect that new reality.
Yes, and I think I heard you say that the fee is now proposed, or in the proposed franchise, would be a 5.2% fee.
0.525%.
Excuse me, 0.252, and 3.375 is going to RCC,
right?
And the balance, which the balance is coming to us, and so we're like we're 0.145 or something like that.
Something like that. It comes out to about 15 grand annually.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. One of the things. So I've been connected to the franchise negotiations a little bit. One of the things that I've been pushing for is to make this term as long as possible from a negotiation perspective, because the FCC over the last decade continues to erode local opportunities, local control, and we don't know what the future is. So I've come to the conclusion that with Matt's efforts and others, that we probably have a length, the best length that we can, and I think it's a key provision. But I just wanted to share that with you. So, okay. Anything else on the franchise? Do you folks want another touch at this? Assuming we get back from.
What I'll do is I'll report back to Comcast that following the council study session, the council has decided to agendize it for action on the first meeting in November, assuming that's where you want to home it. And if there's any further comments that they want to get back to me, they better do so toot sweet. They've had it for a week. And it's a pretty good negotiating team that they have in place. So I'm being a little flip. But we'll get back to that and notify them that it's on for action. And if there's any other comments, please let me know.
Does that work? Yep. Sounds like it does. Okay, great. We will do that, in which case we are about to step into an executive session, an executive closed session. And at this time, on the agenda, the City Council will recess to executive session, closed session, for approximately 30 minutes per RCW 4230.140, sub 4, sub B, to review proposals and adopt strategy to be taken for the city during the course of collective bargaining agreement also per RCW 4230.1110, sub 1, sub G, to review the performance of a public employee, and per RCW 4230.110, sub 1, sub I, to discuss potential litigation with legal counsel. Any action on these issues will only be taken during the open council session. The executive session I will return to announce when the executive session has closed and closed or has been completed, and then close the hearing, tonight's meeting, I should say. And Mr. Kaiser, anything you need to add to that?
The only thing I would suggest to the council to add is that at present there is no action which is anticipated to be scheduled. Following the conclusion of any executive sessions, council is anticipated to adjourn.
Thank you. So no action is anticipated. We'll move into executive. Thank you. extending the executive session for another 20 minutes. Thank you. We're extending the executive session for 5 more minutes. Okay, the executive session for this evening, October 17th, is concluded. No action is taken.